I should begin. Hello, is this on? Is it on? Is it off? Is it on? Hello? It's off? It's on? Hello? Yep. Okay. Good to go. Good to go. Good to go. Good to go. Okay. Hello? Yes? Wonderful. Okay. We are good to go after a lot of stuff, but we're in Paris. It's beautiful, so it's fine. Like, even a fire drill here is great, right? I wasn't here for the fire drill, but you go outside and it's so beautiful, you're like, it's okay, it's a fire drill. It's fine. I can be fine with this. Okay, so I guess I'll just jump right in. So, or I won't, because nothing works, and we need to make it work. It doesn't work? Yeah, sorry. We have to put that. We have to put that back. Makes sense. Okay, now it's gonna work. How's it work? It's not gonna work. It's not gonna work. Oh, it's fantastic. It moves it a little bit to the left and to the right, but not. It doesn't cycle it, so I can move it literally a pixel left and a pixel right, or I can. That's a cool feature. The 1 pixel left or right feature.
We have to put it back on.
We have to.
Your USB key.
My USB key.
Yes, because we removed it.
We removed this. Okay. Apparently, there's a protocol for this. There's a whole set of. Sorry, I'm not sure why. It's probably me. So, is it because it's a PDF?
No, it's just because it was on the key and we removed it.
Oh, I see. Yeah, it's fine. Everybody's deep in thought, anyway. I can see. Yeah, just give it a second. Sorry, is everybody else's PDF also? Can I move the laptop over there? Can I just move it along from the laptop? Can I bring the laptop over there?
Sorry about that.
Yeah, it's fine. Maybe I can help by.
That's okay with you. You put it like this size from where it goes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fine. It's fine. Yeah, sorry again about the delay. Not sure why that happened, but we seem to be good now. So thank you for your patience. Yeah, so the fundamental problem we're going to be talking about is the Oracle problem, or essentially the problem of how do we reliably trigger a contract. Now, just in case, just so we have the same kind of ground to stand on, the same ideas to work with. it's important to understand that the contracts on Ethereum or the vast majority of other chains, they essentially cannot reach out to data. So smart contracts running in Ethereum, if you've gotten farther along in a process where you're building a contract that needs to know about market events, or a contract that needs to know about IoT data for insurance, or a contract that needs to do anything other than tokenization by being able to consume data, or you need your contract to reliably generate off-chain events, it can't do that. So this is a very large limiting factor in what contracts can do. Without the ability for a smart contract to talk to an API and get data, you can't have it compete with existing digital agreements that already do that. You can't make a lot of things. You can't make high quality derivatives, you can't make insurance products, you can't make trade finance products. You can't build much more than tokenized assets of some kind, which is a huge limiting factor. It's this limiting factor that we seek to basically get rid of. Now, if we're able to get rid of this limiting factor, it's very possible we go to the next stage of the space's development. To put that into context, what I mean by going to the next stage of the space's development, it might just be useful to do a quick overview of how the space has evolved. I mean, the smart contract space. So initially we had multi-signature functionality in Bitcoin. That was considered a smart contract. That's all you had for smart contract functionality. Then you had protocol, opcode-based protocols. Those were started around 2013, and they allowed you to make a smart contract like a decentralized exchange or something else. And in order to have that smart contract type, you needed to go to a protocol developer and you needed to get them to change their protocol, which took months of development, testing, deployment. So you couldn't write your own contract. You had to talk to a protocol developer, and they had to bake the contract right into their protocol. Then Ethereum made a very substantial leap forward of allowing people to go from I need to talk to a protocol developer when I make a contract, when I want a new contract, to I can write my own contract. So now people can sit down and they can they can script out their own contracts, and that means people can script up really cool stuff, right? So the features massively expanded, the types of contracts massively expanded, and the space grew, right? Like a lot of the companies out there, outside of this presentation room and out there in the world, they can exist because people can script up a type of contract that they weren't able to before. So that's a great thing, I think, that Ethereum did for the larger space. The next stage of development that we think is very likely and very useful is the stage where we go from scriptable smart contracts to externally connected smart contracts. So what that means is now I can script up a contract, but what I can script it to do is much greater, right? Right now, all I can do is I can make a scriptable smart contract for token movement. What the world is going to be like very soon, and I think is going to be a very large improvement, is the ability that you can make a scriptable smart contract that can talk to various data feeds, that can actually ship things on its own, affect various events in the real world, react to events in the real world, and do that securely and reliably, right? That's another huge leap in features. That's another huge leap in what people can build. And in our opinion, it's another very large expansion of what the smart contract space in general will be capable of doing. So in order to get to that, we need to solve this problem. So we need to look at how do we get reliable connectivity between a smart contract, a scriptable smart contract in a network like Ethereum, and the various data inputs, payment outputs, all the events that a smart contract might want to consume, and all the events that a smart contract might want to generate. And how do we do that reliably? Now, I'm going to go through kind of our approach to this. We have a two-sided approach. One side is the application of decentralization, and the other side is trusted execution environments. The first kind of basic idea that we need to look at is how do we solve this problem is the fact that basically blockchain middleware, also often called oracles, is what solves this problem. You have a piece of software that provides certain security guarantees about its reliability, and has the capability of getting data to the contract and getting the contract to talk to other systems. The key point in our experience, in our experience building oracles and smart contracts, so smart contracts we've been building for over 5 years, oracles, for over 3 years, and combining them for a lot of different use cases. Excuse me. The key idea, I think, to keep in mind is that end-to-end reliability is what every system that touches a smart contract needs. So the unique property of a smart contract as compared to its alternatives, as compared to digital agreements running in a central server, the unique property of a smart contract is that it's highly reliable, right? If you have a private key that has a Bitcoin attached to it, you have that Bitcoin. No matter what happens, you have it, right? If you run a smart contract in Ethereum, assuming you coded it up correctly and you don't introduce a whole bunch of problems, then it's going to run, right? That's a unique property no other system of digital agreement has, right? In our opinion, that is the unique property of this technology. And if we want a smart contract to be externally connected, that unique property then needs to extend to the middleware and eventually the data sources. So what you need is, you need end-to-end reliability is basically what it is. If people are going to use externally connected contracts for any substantial amounts of value, they need end-to-end reliability. Because practically speaking, nobody cares if a part of your system is secure. All people care about is if your system is secure, which means the whole system, which means the thing that triggers what happens in the system. So this end-to-end reliability is essentially the focus of our body of work at Chainlink. It's on creating this blockchain middleware that's both feature-rich, open source, peer-reviewed, and we work with the academic security research community to get that as far as we can, and also that it's extremely secure. So one way, just to put things into perspective, one way not to solve this problem, in our opinion, is to use a single centralized oracle that's provided by some kind of closed-sourced piece of software. So if you use a single centralized oracle, then your point of failure is probably that oracle. The data source you're going to be using is probably a larger company with good security that has been around for some amount of years. And then you're going to have the decentralized computation network, which is relatively new, but supposedly very secure due to high redundancy. And then you're going to have one oracle run by a small team of people using closed source code. This is the model we're trying to get away from. It's a model where there's a failure mode. And this failure mode eliminates the possibility of higher value contracts, in our opinion. So this is essentially the model that we think, we have this model on a site called smartcontract.com. We've been doing this model for years before, and we just don't think it provides it doesn't provide what the space is about. So the way to move away from this model is essentially to decentralize this mechanism. So that, that's the kind of foundation that Chainlink is built on. It's built on the idea that, why don't I have an oracle mechanism where if I want 5 oracles or 10 oracles or 15 oracles, I can choose how many oracles I want to guarantee the validity of an input and the accuracy of an input. And unlike traditional blockchain networks where I'm forced to buy 21,000 or however many thousands of nodes, in our variation, you can say I want 5 or 10 or 50 or however much decentralization I want to consume is the amount of decentralization I can consume for the security I want to pay for. So the first point is decentralizing this oracle mechanism, which once that's decentralized, then you can decentralize the data origin level, right? So the point is that we have a decentralized contract state change layer, then we have an oracle mechanism that's decentralized, and then once those two are decentralized, then we could also decentralize things at the level of the origin. Now, just to put this in slightly clearer perspective, because I know there's a number of kind of different ideas going together here, and I'm still a little jet lagged, so yeah, who knows what's actually going on, and just to make it slightly clearer, a simple example would be delivery, payment for delivery. So let's say you had a high value good arriving somewhere, and you had it being triggered, and you had that recorded and managed by a irreversible, highly reliable smart contract, right? So because you have this highly reliable contract, you don't have a lot of fallback scenarios. You want to make sure the smart contract executes correctly. In our scenario, you can get the data from two different sources about, yes, my good has been delivered. Yes, my good has clearly been delivered. Then you want to generate some kind of payment. Let's say you want to pay this person out in Zcash, right? For whatever reason, you want to pay for this good in Zcash. At that point, your smart contract needs to know the market price of Zcash. And then you also need to pay, for which you also need a chain link. So on the payment side, with the different providers of data, if somebody were to manipulate the data input about the market price, they could get a much higher payment from your highly reliable contract. That's not a problem you want. The way to possibly solve this problem is, why don't I pay slightly more for a greater degree of redundancy, a greater degree of decentralization? My market price is now reliable. I know that my contract will reliably pay the correct amount. I now have a reliable contract that can know something about an important event, and one that can reliably pay the correct amount. So initially, this is the beginning of our approach. It's the foundation on which we're built, is the fact that you should be able to purchase however much decentralization you want to create a reliable Oracle mechanism. The other side of our thesis is also that we essentially are generating many pre-made inputs and outputs. What that means is we have hundreds of chain links that represent discrete individual APIs. So what a chain link actually is it's a contract on chain that represents a specific resource or API off chain. So one of the other key ideas that is less focused on security and is more focused on giving people useful building blocks is the fact that, you know, the way you build a web app today is you combine APIs into some core code, right? You combine a GPS API, an SMS API, and a payments API. And that's how you can build an Uber MVP in a week, right? Because you can write your core code and combine these APIs. What Chainlink does, and what we basically have, is a large collection of these pre-made contracts that individually represent each resource that you would want to connect to your contract. So that means if you wanted to build some kind of decentralized application and you needed an interest rate and you needed a bank payment and you needed to send an SMS, all you would need to do is to get your contract to talk to 3 Chainlink contracts on chain, and you would have your decentralized app doing those 3 valuable off-chain events in a day or 2. So that's another kind of very important part of not as much the security, but the features that we think will take the space to the next level. So essentially this collection of building blocks. Now, the next part of our thesis is something called trusted execution environments. One of the reasons we've decided to begin adopting this approach is because we practice something called the defense in depth strategy. Defense in depth means that you're not myopically focused on a single approach. Defense in depth means that you adopt all the approaches that work. And that's essentially the philosophy we have at Chainlink, is that as better approaches like zero-knowledge proofs and eventually homomorphic encryption, eventually other approaches, we seek to build the best Oracle middleware for all the high-quality chains you would ever want to use as a developer on the basis of good security practices, not on the basis of like falling in love with one approach. So the second approach on top of decentralization that we think has merits worth exploring is trusted execution environments. Essentially, trusted execution environments create a smaller attack surface area for each node operator. What that means is that you have specialized hardware like Intel SGX being run by Chainlink node operators. This means that they can't inject vulnerabilities, adversaries can't inject vulnerabilities, because the hardware talks directly to the application with its own segregated resources. It doesn't go through the hypervisor, it doesn't go through the OS. This is essentially the value of trusted hardware. So basically the main idea is that you can't inject vulnerabilities into a Chainlink node as a node operator or as an adversary. because supposedly these trusted execution environments are reliable. Once again, this is an additional level of security on top of decentralization. The approach we use for this is something called Town Crier. It's been on production for, I think, close to or maybe even over 2 years now, using Intel SGX to provide data to Ethereum contracts. It's made by really, really smart people from Cornell and IC3. And we're very lucky to work with them, and we've been very lucky to acquire Town Crier and bring it into Chainlink as Chainlink's approach to trusted execution environments. Essentially what it is the same thing as an Oracle, just using a trusted execution environment. That means that the Oracle software that runs off-chain is run in this segregated, highly secure environment to query data sources, verify that some data came from a data source, and then sign that that data came from that data source, putting both the data and the verifiable signature that the data came from the data source back onto the chain, back into the contract. So what trusted executions provide is a number of very, very good properties. One of them is confidential off-chain data delivery. This means that you can send an encrypted data to a Chainlink node operator. The Chainlink node operator can never know what the data is. They can even do computations on the data and then send the results or the data back to the contract. So this means that you could have multiple independent Chainlink nodes coming to consensus. You can have individual Chainlink nodes processing data, and that node operator themselves will never know what they're processing. The other piece of this that's very useful is the ability to do confidential credential management. So confidential credential management is particularly useful if you want a Chainlink to do something like a bank payment. This means that you can have somebody that's not as good at security running a Chainlink that has SGX, and the credential management is baked in. This means that the reliability of doing off-chain payments greatly increases without putting a burden on the people that want to offer that service. So credential management, generally speaking, is a huge problem for any APIs or data providers or payments providers that, well, a lot of them use credentials, especially for premium data. So credential management is a key piece. And then the other really interesting piece that I think the folks in this room will probably appreciate to a degree more than other folks is the control of private keys. So the control of a private key for use by a smart contract is actually a really, really powerful thing. So if you want your Ethereum contract to control the private key of a Hyperledger contract, or you want to control the private key of a Bitcoin address that can sign multi-sigs, the trusted execution environment can house the private keys that only a specific contract can use. So you can basically put a collection of other cross-chain capabilities into a Chainlink, house the private keys in that Chainlink, and then say that you will only allow these private keys to be used from these commands by a smart contract. And now the smart contract has control over a bunch of other private key-based resources. So the other thing that we've seen with trusted execution environments is the splitting of smart contracts into an on-chain and an off-chain piece. So what this means is that there's either code you want to keep private, or there's code that you don't want to run on-chain for scalability or cost reasons. This code can be run in a trusted execution environment confidentially, and at a larger degree of scale. So this means that in a trusted execution environment, you can basically run the part of your contract you want to keep private, or the part that's too costly to compute on-chain. It creates a lot of positive scalability dynamics, and in fact, the people that we've seen using trusted execution environments successfully have moved parts of their contract's functionality into this environment, because it can scalably and privately compute certain things that they wouldn't be able to do on-chain. This, again, expands what a smart contract is able to do. The other thing that is particularly attractive to us is the fact that you can do computations in the trusted execution environment of well-tested libraries. So well-tested libraries mean that you can take a piece of code that has been around for 5, 10, 15, 20 years that does some specific task, like creating randomness or generating some kind of output that you need, you can put that code into a trusted execution environment, knowing that it's the highly audited, highly reliable code you're used to using in traditional, Web 2 or Web 3, Web 2 world. And now you can run it as part of your contract in this environment. So you can make highly valuable, highly audited, reliable code part of your contract, and you know that it'll run correctly because it's running in this environment. So one example of this that's particularly relevant to our space is the generation of randomness for lottery contracts. So let's say there's somebody developing a lottery contract and they want to guarantee to their users that nobody's going to collude. So they want to guarantee that their contract is fair. I mean, it doesn't really matter that it's a lottery contract. They have an input of randomness that decides who wins, and they want to provide a guarantee to their end user that that input that guarantees who wins is reliable, is not gamed. So in the scope of our thesis of decentralization and execution environments, trusted execution environments, let's just kind of look at how that plays out. Initially, what you could do is you could get a random number generation library, run it in Intel SGX. You know that code is reliable and widely used. You run it in this trusted execution environment that's highly secure and difficult to breach. It generates the randomness that you need, which then gets sent back to the lottery contract. So now I've generated some kind of randomness in a unique environment using a well-tested, highly audited piece of code, and the trusted execution environment can even tell me, hey, I have generated this randomness from this code. Here's a signature proving that. Now, let's say you like this additional level of security, but you don't want to rely on SGX completely because it has its flaws or it has its worries or it's not finished or whatever thesis you might have. At this point, the flexibility of the approach that Chainlink has is that you can say, I want multiple nodes. I want a quorum of 3, 5, 10, 15, 20, however many nodes I feel I need to pay for. However much decentralized computation I want to purchase. And then you basically purchase that computation from a large collection of nodes. The amount of nodes you want to pay for, not the amount of nodes that we tell you. Not the amount of nodes that kind of like some magical system decides is the right number, but the amount of nodes that essentially a good design pattern says is probably the right amount of nodes. And then once you have the randomness generated, you usually want to pay. So, paying people is usually what happens at the end of most contracts, and then people usually want to be paid in the form that they want to be paid in. They don't care what form you want to pay them in. Nobody cares that somebody wants to pay them in some format that they don't want to be paid in. So essentially the next piece of value is that once you've securely generated this randomness, you've securely been able to trigger a reliable contract. Now you want to pay people in the form they want to be paid in. I mean, this I guess is just an example of what a good, highly reliably triggered contract looks like. It's reliable on the edges, it's reliable in the middle, and it can pay people, it can settle the contract the way people want. This is, in our opinion, how the future of a good contract looks. Now, just to recap, essentially, the focus we have is on end-to-end reliability. That means decentralization and a multitude of inputs and outputs so people can build a large combination of truly useful contracts. And on top of this decentralization and multitude of inputs, the application of many other approaches, starting out with trusted execution environments as being the one that might have the most immediate value, and going on to others like zero-knowledge proofs, eventually homomorphic encryption, and others. So yeah, I mean, you guys are welcome to look at what we've built. We have a booth. We have some technical folks there. We have a workshop on Thursday where some of the folks from our company are going to dive into some more detail on how to work through building something. Essentially, our company exists to enable people in this room to build great great contracts. That's what our company seeks to do. Like, our company succeeds if we help you guys build really cool contracts. That's what we're doing with like our time and our lives, and we're basically building all this because we think that once you have all the necessary building blocks in place, you can build great things, and that's what would make us really, really proud and happy. And I think it would really help, expand the space to a new stage of development. So you're very welcome to check it out, and we're very open to feedback. If there's anything we're missing, anything you'd like to see, anything you'd find to be particularly useful, we definitely want to hear about it. Yeah, I appreciate your attention, and I don't know if I have time for questions. If I do, I don't, because of some time thing. Yeah, sorry, I don't know what happened with time. There was drill, and I got to cut it. Okay, we're good. Yeah, sorry, no time for questions. Sorry about that. Okay, thank you.